Hey, welcome to Beyond Organic Wine. I'm Adam Huss. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you can be inspired and informed so that you can have meaningful impact on shaping the future of wine. This episode features a conversation with Amy Wong, an attorney and the policy and program advocate with the Oregon Organic Coalition. As the former executive director for the Oregon Organic Coalition, Amy was instrumental to making the historic first Oregon Organic Wine Growers Conference happen in 2025, and she is once again active in facilitating the second Organic Wine Growers Conference happening this April 20th and 21st, 2026. This is the only wine conference in Oregon and one of the few in the world that is founded on the farming rather than just the wine. New Zealand has a great organic wine conference as well, and a few others, but consider that the vast majority of wine tastings and conferences focus on regional or stylistic elements of wine rather than how the grapes were farmed. It's probably no surprise to anyone that as the host of the Beyond Organic Wine podcast, I think it's really important to support this kind of ecological farming first approach to wine. And I hope to see you at this year's Oregon Organic Wine Growers Conference. But this conversation is much bigger than just wine. Wine is one part of Amy's important work, and she gives us insight and practical advice about how we can navigate the local, state, and national organic issues and policies, and how we can become farmer advocates and agents of change toward a more organic, ecological food and wine system. This is an information and resource-rich conversation that is timely, urgent, and provides proactive ways of addressing some of our biggest needs. Please share and enjoy. Amy, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on Beyond Organic Wine. Could you please introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. My name is Amy Wong, and I am with the Oregon Organic Coalition. And when we first met last year at the Organically Grown Wine Conference, I was the executive director. I have now transitioned. We have a new executive director, Mallory Cochran, and I am a policy and project consultant. So I'm still handling our policy and helping with the conference this year. But yeah, so that's a quick one.
Yeah. Well, what does the Oregon Organic Coalition do? Like, what is that, the work of that?
So our mission, the Oregon Organic Coalition's mission, is to advance the development and growth of the organic industry, practices, and community in Oregon. And our vision is a resilient regional food system rooted in organic practices. And when we use the term organic practices, we mean the principles of organic agriculture as practiced by many communities long before there was a standard, such as health, ecology, fairness, and care.
Oh, I love that it's sort of, it's almost beyond organic. Your approach to organic is almost beyond organic, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to say organic is just a floor and people are free. The standard is just a floor. And so many organic growers go far above that floor. And I think, it's sad to me right now. I think a lot of people assume the worst of organic and it's just people are barely meeting that floor when I know growers who have been certified or just using organic practices who do so much more than that floor.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I had the conversation with an organic grower in Oregon who was like, I said something about that, like, there's this, addressed it as a minimal thing, and they were like, well, that's not the organic that I practice. They were, very, very much like organic to them was this holistic approach that involved, thinking about soil, thinking about, it wasn't just removing X, Y, and Z. It was thinking about the whole farm, the whole system, the whole ecosystem
Yeah,
approach, which is good.
exactly. Exactly. I think people forget too that you need to be using cover crops. Like there is a whole farm system or like that stuff is written into the federal code that you need to be thinking about these things. But, I know that can get super wonky. And of course, there's been lobbying to make it easier potentially for really large scale organic, but it's still organic, at least meeting that floor, again, compared to a lot of the normal monoculture, GMO, heavily doused in glyphosate type of crop systems that you see a lot in this country.
Well, that's even kind of surprising to me what you just said, that there are some prescriptive things, not just like, not just prohibitions, but actually like, practices that are required. Can you let's get a little wonky if you don't mind. Like, what are some of those other things that people might that maybe people take for granted or people don't know about or people overlook that are elements of organic?
Sure. Let me preface this where while I am a wonk, I'm like a local wonk. And so
Okay.
I don't work that much at the federal level. Like I've been to NOSB meetings, but I have never testified in front of them. But from my work that I have done, you do need to have, as part of your certification, you need to have an organic systems plan. You need to be talking about some of what your approach to the whole farm. And I do think that a lot of that also entails conservation, how you are increasing biodiversity. Oregon Tilth put out a really interesting report about increasing biodiversity on organic farms. And it was a lot of the practices you could do, like putting in hedgerows, like making sure you had habitat for birds and other insects, species like that. And I think that type of work, not just like, no, you can't use GMOs, no, you can't use synthetic, or there's some synthetics involved, but can't use pesticides or things like that. There's also, how are you caring for your soil? Are you applying compost? Are you using cover crops? Like those things do get factored in.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, maybe one of the questions that, I think is important for people to understand is, what are the stated objectives of these organic programs, whether it's, if you want to address it from the local standpoint, from the Oregon standpoint, or even from the federal standpoint, or even bigger than that, the global standpoint. Like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of different good things that you could attribute to going organic, whether it's like, food safety and human health. It could be environmental protection, which could also be human health. Could be nutrition. Like, is there a stated objective, or is it sort of like going for all of these things at once? Is there, what is the goals? Or yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question, especially when you look at all of the various levels. I mean, something people don't know is Oregon actually has been a long time leader in, let's say, the organic movement. So with the rise of genetically engineered crops, that Oregon started to realize, hey, we need to differentiate ourselves, and for good or for bad. It's in so many people say, oh, I wish that people who were using GMOs or people who were using pesticides and herbicides, that's what needs to be on the label, not the organic seal. But this is how it played out. And Oregon started saying we need to differentiate. And they started to create a standard at the state level in the 70s that eventually got rolled into the standard, the federal standard. And I think it was, I know some of these people who are involved, and they wanted to, I would say, like the integrity, like that true integrity of farming in harmony with nature, and ideally treating people well, and having healthy soil, and having food that was more nutritionally dense. So I think that's a great piece, how it got started. And then iFoam International, they do a lot on the global scale, and I think they really also talk about the principles that I mentioned at the beginning. Like that's their
Mhm.
aim from an international perspective. In Oregon, we just saw that we have like over 200 specialty crops here. Like this is also an incredibly diverse state for what we can grow here. We have incredibly fertile soil in the Willamette Valley. You can grow basically anything there. We grow tons of vegetable seeds, some of the world's supply of certain varieties of brassica seeds. So I think for us, it was to make sure that we're really protecting our agricultural heritage and the ability to be growing these things into the future. I think one of your questions in your email that you posed to me was like, why do I do this work? And I think so much of it was like seeing the consolidation of our food system and the collapse of regional infrastructure. I wanted to try and do work that could counter that and make sure that we have a really thriving, resilient regional food system here in Oregon. And I found organic was a good umbrella to be working under. I mean, there's probably many that you could, but doing policy at the state level is tricky. It's hard to fund. Someone might be doing some work adjacent to yours, but not exactly it. And so I found I could work on food systems under the umbrella of organic because I think it is a large umbrella and it does, encompass many types of growers to try and be furthering a resilient regional food system by doing organic advocacy.
How's it going? Like, do you? I, I mean, in terms of since you've started this work, have you seen progress? Have you seen digress or regress? Is it, do you have statistics about Oregon or even more broader than Oregon?
So I came to Oregon in 2010 to go to law school, specifically to get an environmental law degree to focus on sustainable agriculture. So I've been around, let's say, the Oregon world for 17 years. And so in that time, I saw I've seen a lot of progress and a lot of frustrations as well. And I think another reason that I have chosen to work at the state level was many times in that 17 years, the federal government, well in advance of this administration, although this administration has been very challenging in many ways and continues to be, but it's often mired in gridlock, corporate lobbying, regulatory capture, and not that that can't happen at the state level, but it's easier on some levels to be working on things at your state level because you have easier access to some of the people on some levels. And so let's see, when I was my very last semester in law school, I was clerking for the Center for Food Safety. And at that time, Monsanto had sued Jackson County over an ordinance that they had passed banning the cultivation of genetically engineered crops. And they have had seed production. They had like a lot of beta crop seed production down there. So that they were growing genetically engineered sugar beets, and it was threatening these seed growers. And so I got to work on that case, and that was fantastic. And it introduced me to a bunch of seed growers, and they ended up winning that case, which was amazing. So you cannot grow genetically engineered crops in Jackson County, so it's a great place to be growing organic seed, which by law can't be contaminated with GMO pollen. There was another county next door that also passed the same initiative, but they were preempted at the state level, whereas Jackson County was exempted. So that was a big win that I saw. I then started working to help protect the Willamette Valley Protected District from more canola in this special seed growing region. And we've been able to maintain protections, but not permanently. Like they're going to sunset again next year, but at least we've protected them for the last 10 years. So we have thriving brassica seed production and other vegetable seed production in the Willamette Valley. Some other accomplishments that that I'm talking more from my personal experience, like things I've done. There's definitely been many more great food systems work done. I then was the policy director for Friends of Family Farmers, and I was able to get the first grant fund for local meat processing. So much of this consolidation that I mentioned earlier,
Mm,
you really have seen that in meat processing. So Oregon
yeah.
actually started a state meat inspection program. It was the first time it had happened in decades. And it also launched a fund to help people build meat processing facilities in rural areas or for small scale production, which really helped that bottleneck. So that was a big win. In terms of the organic work, we were able to get a legislatively mandated work group put together that created the initial draft of an organic action plan that laid out some steps for us to take. We also helped phase out the use of chlorpyrifos with other advocacy organizations, namely Pucun Farm Workers Union. And then we also were able to get an economic assessment done of the Oregon organic sector, you could say, and had it labeled an emerging sector. So that research was great. It gave us some data showing that we actually are importing a lot more organic food that we could be growing here, which could be helping us have an economic benefit. And I'd say our largest, really big win was that it took several years, but we now have an organic agriculture program at the Oregon State University Center for Resilient Agriculture and Food Systems, and there's 6 organic extension specialists helping people across crop systems. And it's not certified organic; it's anyone interested in agroecological, regenerative, whatever word you want to use. They are helping people do that. So that's been a huge accomplishment. And as I said, it started with one, and it was with help from Oregon Tilth had originally given some seed money to OSU to have the person half time. Then we went to the legislature and advocated to get that person full time, then another person. And then we went back and got 4 more positions. And they also have a coordinator and some other research help. So it's one of the first of its kind type of centers that are dedicated to research, technical assistance, applied research in the field. So it's really the last ones just got hired last year. And so it's still relatively new, but already the innovation research coming out of it is super exciting. So that's been very exciting to watch. And then this past legislative session, we actually had to protect that program. It was facing, like so many states around the country, facing budget cuts and not great fiscal situations. And so the Oregon State University statewide programming, of which Extension is a part of, was facing a disproportionate cut of 7.1%. So
Mm,
we launched into advocacy mode and ended up they didn't get any cuts, which was fantastic. And that was, I think,
nice.
yes, our advocacy helped, but there were some other factors too. But that was, so now at least they're protected for now. And it was a real bipartisan effort because the statewides have, in addition to extension, it's also things like master gardeners and future farmers of America. And so it's really helping a lot of the rural communities and the natural resource industries. So it's an economic driver. And so I think I'm hoping that we have raised the profile on not only the organic agriculture program, but all of statewides. And I hope that that will help protect them into the future as so many state legislatures across the country are facing challenges in light of the federal HR1 bill that's going to, decimate things like SNAP and put a huge burden on the states that the feds used to cover.
Mm. Yeah, it makes me think, it makes me realize, I guess, more and more the the further along I go on this path as well is just how important the policy work that you do is, you know, in relation to those of us who are trying to farm with these values, because so much of what we do, and it all matters, right? I don't want to discourage anybody, but like you can have so much good work undercut by just bad policy that allows for and incentivizes bad farming and things like that. Is there how do you see that balance? Obviously you're on the policy side, so but if you can speak to farmers who share the values, like how can they help shape policy? Like, is there more? What are the how can we be better citizens, better organic citizens in terms of driving change at a policy level?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for instance, Patty Skinkis, who is an amazing extension specialist, is falls under that statewide programming. So she works with all the organic wine growers network here in Oregon and beyond that. So it is really important for people then to support advocacy work, and I'd say that's what's so hard. I don't know why, but like if you know of a group in your state that is working on ag issues, that support small farmers, that support ecological farming, please support them. If they're sending out an action alert asking you to sign on, please sign on. If they want you to attend a lobby day and it's not too onerous for you to do so, please do that. If they want to set up a meeting for you with a legislator, please consider doing that. Actually, Di Crisp from Lumos Wine, he came to a lobby day that I did this year and had great stories. I had two other farmers with us as well. So it's like those types of things really matter. And I know it can and be a pain to, carve out a day or a half day to go to your capital. And for some people, that's not possible. I mean, the good thing, at least in Oregon, and I'm assuming in many other states, is with the pandemic, all of a sudden there's virtual meetings, like there's virtual hearings. Like it is easier than ever for people who are further away from their capitals to be able to participate. Try and do that. Find an organization that is doing this work and just follow them. I'm sure that most of them have social media or you get on their news mailing list. Like try and engage. They'll make it as easy for you as possible. And here in Oregon, we have the Oregon Organic Coalition, Friends of Family Farmers, Thousand Friends of Oregon is doing great work. We also have a great organization called the Oregon Community Food Systems Network, which is a clearinghouse for a lot of different organizations who are doing policy. And you could plug in there and figure out what all sorts of policy is doing, like a lot of hunger work, like trying to work on food access and looking that food access and food policy and food security, they're all kind of part of the same ball globe, and it's just touching different spots, and it's all really interrelated. So when we want more equity in our food systems, we have to be thinking about these things. At the national level, I think that there's some really great organizations. the National Organic Coalition, NSAC, these groups are doing a lot of grassroots organizing for farmers. And again, talking about advocating for the organic standard, the National Organic Standards Board in a normal year meets twice a year, and there is a public component where you can give testimony. And I've now met in my work a couple people who have served on the NOSB or are currently on it. And one of them, Scott Rice, he said when he was on the board that it really is, they really do listen to the feedback that they get. And it's important for people to do that. And I think sometimes, especially at a federal level, people are like, oh, it's so gamed out, I'm not even going to bother. But I think that if there is something that you really care about, please make the time. It's easy to be able to submit comments. Or again, these groups, the National Organic Coalition, NSAC, which is the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition, they make it easy for people to be able to submit comments. There's usually templates, things like that. There's plenty of advocates out there who will help you, hold your hand, set up the meeting for you. Just do the engagement.
That's great. Well, it sounds like just letting these advocates and representatives know that you exist, get on their mailing list so that you get notified by when they need your help or need you sign on to
Mm-hmm.
things is a step one, an easiest step, which you can just do from your home, from your computer.
Yep.
Like go to the websites, go, sign on, send an email, even if it's a short email, to, let people know you support what they're doing and are farming in that way and want to, help in any way that you can when they need help. And
Yeah.
yeah,
I can't
that's
say enough about how legislators love hearing from farmers. Like that's like +5 if you show up and you're a farmer. It's like it's like so legitimate. They love getting photos with farmers. It's just like I don't know. So the more a
that's
farmer can
awesome.
go into a capital, the better. And I know that
Should we
lots of
wear
organic.
overalls? I mean,
I mean, you don't have to, but I think you definitely don't have to put on a suit. That's the other thing. You don't need to dress up. Just be maybe in DC, and even then, I don't think you need to unless you're in a hearing or something. But yeah, no, they just love that authenticity and hearing from farmers. I mean, we often in our work we will take legislators to farms as well, or like organize facility tours or farm tours, and legislators love getting out in the field too.
That's great. Well,
Host a
what
farm,
is
host a legislator to on your farm. That's another great thing.
that's great. Like, would that mean planning an event where you get a bunch of people there because they probably want to talk to their constituents, or would
Not
they
not
come?
necessarily. It can be
Okay,
small. Some of them
okay,
just want to, get out there, have a photo op, talk to a farmer. Ideally it would be, you would be a constituent of the legislator, but or it could be close by, or they're on a committee that is going to be hearing something that's important to farming and ag in general. Yeah, I think yes and no. And again, work with an advocacy organization. Say, hey, if you ever want to host a legislator, I'd be happy to have them on my farm.
that's great. Does what do you think at this point it it is worth the time to reach out to maybe legislators who might disagree with some of these things, who might be fighting against some of these policies, to try to like I guess my question is, to what extent do we or do farmers need to think about educating representatives as well as just engaging with them, sort of giving
Oh,
them a sense.
100%.
Yeah, like there's a lot of right. Just understanding what goes into being an organic farmer and being a farmer in general, right?
Yeah, so I have an example, I don't know, maybe like 7-ish years ago. The talking point that, let's say, the anti-organic movement had in Oregon was that organic was just a bunch of hobby farmers and there's no economic impact, and just don't listen to these small little hobby farmers. And I had a legislator say that like on a record. And at we were able to bring in then to counter that, like a large scale organic grower from Eastern Oregon, and we were able to show the economic impact of organic in Oregon. And then since then, more research has been done about, I think organic now at a national level, and again, certified organic. Of course, if you were to look at everyone using organic practices, it's even more. But even the fact that just certified organic is like over $70 billion industry, trying to show those that representative. Actually, no, it's not just a bunch of small hobby farmers. It's actually can be really big business. And again, as I said, it's a big umbrella though. It's everything from, a small scale market grower all the way to someone who's, maybe selling their grain to Nature's Path or something like that. Or, there's yeah, you
I
get
mean,
what I
this
mean.
this brings up another question that I've been wrestling with a lot about, and maybe you don't have like insight into this any more than I do, but maybe you do. I hope you do. Is there anybody that's pushing back on the premise of that question? That is there anybody that's saying, okay, yeah, you say being a small hobby farmer, like that's a bad thing? Like, is there anybody that's saying like what we actually need is more small farmers, not hobby necessarily, but small farmers who are providing, for their local communities, like, like under 100-acre farms who produce the produce for their
Oh
region,
yeah.
and
I agree with that. Absolutely. Again, big umbrella. And I think that there are many different spokes that you could pull on, and that would make up a resilient regional food system. And, that's where I think the organic debate, there's lots of growers who don't need to be certified organic, and they are absolutely using organic practices, probably beyond organic practices, some of them, and they have direct market connections. They have a food hub, they're selling at farmers market, whatever it might be. And
yeah.
that's critical. Absolutely. Like that to me, like the saddest part of when, we got Earl Butsy and Get Big and Get Out, like we lost that piece of a resilient regional food system. And that's where, I think the answer lies in re-regionalizing our food infrastructure, our food processing, how we're growing food, how we're sharing food. Absolutely. Like right now, you need people kind of along all of the different spokes under that umbrella, and including like, the larger scale growers who can be selling into a larger processor who's going to make the cereal that's going to go onto the shelves at the co-op or the grocery store that has a lot of organic products, because consumers want that. And we are seeing that consumers, especially the younger generations, they want that food. And, in my perfect world, sure, we'd all be able to be buying and affording to buy from small farmers, small ranchers, direct from them. But sometimes I have to go to the grocery store. We also urbanized for a reason, and grocery stores are still going to be a part of our food system. And how those grocery stores are stocked matter as well. So I am, pushing back on, let's say that hobby farming is bad, but that is an important component. And you cannot say that organic is just all small hobby farmers. It is absolutely an umbrella.
I guess my thinking about this like a network of localized smaller farms seems a lot more resilient, especially, considering current world events and America's involvement in the Middle East,
Ugh,
and
yeah.
the instability that that's causing to these massive global systems of trade and commerce, that by which most of us get the things that not most of us, but yeah, I would say most people get the food that they get at the grocery store, like
Yeah.
their fertilizers coming from Morocco, their,
Yep.
like the fuel, like the diesel for their tractors is coming from the Strait of Hormuz, or whatever it is. These are really fragile global systems that we're now breaking. We're now like showing how fragile they are, and the
Hmm.
costs of these things are going to be seen this fall. Like we're going to
I
be,
know.
the downstream effect of what's happening right now, all of us are going to feel at
Years.
the grocery store, yeah, for years.
For
and
years.
and I mean, to me, I live right now in a city that depends on so much global trade. I just saw a map yesterday that's like the county of Los Angeles. Basically, there's only, I think, 5 states in the United States that have a larger population than the county of Los Angeles. And it's like the ones you can guess, it's like New York, Texas, Florida, and Pennsylvania and Ohio, and that's about it. I mean, I think Illinois was one of the other ones. Literally, just our county, and our county relies almost entirely on shipped in goods, from,
Yep.
oh, probably more than hundreds of miles away.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's, I mean, I would I would say heading towards a network of localized farms would be really smart.
It
um,
would be. It's really
given,
sad that the feds got rid of the, food regional food business center. I mean, there's been a lot of change in federal policy that I would say under the last administration there was some starting to fund things that re-regionalize food systems that now have been cut back, unfortunately. And I'm hoping that some of the lessons that were learned during the pandemic, where we also saw major supply chain interruptions, weren't aren't too long gone. Like a great example I have is there's an amazing brand here called Umi Organic. It's a woman named
mm,
Lola Milholland, and Lola makes noodles, and she's using well, or they're using locally grown grain, and so previously the noodles were too expensive to go into the school systems here in Oregon. But when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden they couldn't get the cheaper noodles that they were buying from farther abroad. And Lola wasn't having a problem sourcing grain. She could drive to the farmers and get it and then make the noodles, sell them. And now those noodles are in schools, and they're still in schools. And I'm hoping that things like that start becoming the norm and we don't just drift away from that like we did. I think probably there was a lot of that during the pandemic. You saw a
yeah,
massive jump in organic during the pandemic. You saw a massive jump, I think, in CSA models and local sourcing, and then back to normal. And now we're in another global crisis. I mean, it's like, again, hopefully it doesn't take multiple global crises to get us to fully pivot to relying on regional farms, yet also being realistic. Small organic hobby farms are not going to feed a big city like Los Angeles or Portland for that matter. And we need again different sized farms under that umbrella.
right.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
organic can be at every level of those sizes.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
um, well, I mean, so we're talking about organic generally, but you also started to get quite involved with the wine growers there in Oregon. What in what ways are you working with wine growers there?
Pretty limited. It was kind of kismet that, I mean, and ironic. I met Rob Schultz, who is the organic vineyard manager at Lemelson Vineyards, at a funeral, actually. And we just started chatting about food policy, kind of like we're doing now. We just stayed in touch. And I then was applying for an organic market development grant. It was kind of really quick, and I had just finished a legislative process. And I thought, hey, Rob's got this cool group. He had just started, or had been convening a bunch of organic vineyard managers, as he said, around coffee to, talk about farming and the challenges they were having. And we thought, hey, this could be a cool group to work with. So we wrote them into this grant, and we actually didn't get any funding for that, but the seed was sown, the idea was there. And then as grants move, we were very fortunate to get that grant, and it will not be returning, sadly, but luckily it was paused and we had to go through the Doge process, and it was frozen, but then it actually got unfrozen, unlike so many other ag grants. And so we were lucky, and something changed in the grant. We were able to put some money towards working with Rob and his group, which became the Organic Wine Growers Network. And where we put the money last year was to, basically just launch the network and host the first conference, which was amazing. And
It was.
now we have, kind of gotten them a website. So we're really just, kind of looking at it as we're like a fiscal helper for them, and want to see them thrive, and would love to see more vineyard acreage go into organic production in the Willamette Valley and beyond, throughout Oregon and beyond. So I think it's an example for that. We're also trying to help launch an Oregon organic table grape market. I mean, there's a very small one here now, but it's quite popular, and so we're trying to potentially. There's a faction of the wine growers network who would be open to transitioning some of their blocks away from wine grapes and be able to grow actual table grapes. So we have been convening that and trying to get that launched, and working with organically grown company to see if they would have interest in doing this, or if we need to do it through another channel. But there's definitely interest. So that's another thing that we're doing with the network, in addition to just trying to get the network launched, have the information easier to disseminate and share, and then hopefully grow this conference into something that will be able to keep on going and get more of an audience.
It's really cool what you guys have done. I mean, I'm sure you would give a lot of credit to them, since you're saying that you're more just the financial incentivizer behind some of this stuff. But I would say the conference is fantastic, and it really grows out of, I think, the best element of the organic this organic thing that you guys have going on there, especially in wine, which is this community gathering of organic wine growers there that started. I mean, I'm sure you've attended one of those or a few of those organic wine
Hmm.
growers
Yeah,
meetings. It's
absolutely.
monthly, isn't it now?
It is sometimes, it just kind of depends on the season, like the
Got
time
it.
of year.
Right.
Like during
Right.
busy season, they slow down. Then,
They're not
in the
like
winter, it's more often.
sure.
I will also say our work with the statewides and getting the organic extension specialist launched, like they're one of the six specialists is a soil health specialist. And I know that Shannon has done a lot of work with the network.
Mm,
So they have actually consulted with, more than just um, someone's focused on growing grapes for wine. Like there are other organic extension specialists that have insight into what they're doing that are helping them. So that's another way we have directly helped that segment of our agricultural network in Oregon. I mean, yeah, just having being able to bring visibility, and I think including having wine be included in this conversation about agriculture. Sometimes I think it gets forgotten, and in some ways, we
yeah.
also are working on potentially supporting some regulatory changes. And like right now, you can't put an organic seal on a wine bottle, or you can, but you can't use KMBS. And some people would like to be able to do that, or they would at least like to be able to make the claim that they are farming organically, like the grapes are grown organically. And it's interesting because in Europe, you can put the organic seal because of a substantial equivalency agreement. But usually a lot of times between countries, substantial equivalence is the same. On wine, it's something that's different, whereas the US has different standards than Europe does. So we're potentially helping, supporting a petition to the National Organic Standards Board to address this. But it can be expensive and it can be time consuming. So we'll see. But we are trying to help remove some regulatory barriers for some of these growers who would like to be able to make some label claims.
I will say, as an organic educator, it would make my job so much easier to not have to explain to people that
Oh my gosh, I
yes, you
know.
can have organically grown grapes, and that's all that's in a bottle, but you can't say it on the bottle if you a don't have your winery certified, or b, like if you use over a certain amount of threshold of sulfites. And I mean, to I think like a certain like to me it just never made sense. Like when I started my winery, I was like, wait, so okay, I'm buying organic grapes, so I can say like made with organic grapes on it. And then they had the California CCOF had to educate me and be like, no, you
Mm-hmm.
actually can't.
Yep.
um and it just like it to explain it to somebody is just, most people, it's not even worth the time. It's just like, so I mean, I got around it by putting an ingredients list. I mean, I wanted to put an
Yep.
ingredients list on anyway, but that was like, one of the smarter, like clever workarounds that I've seen people do who wanted to do this was they made their ingredients list like the same size font as like their brand label. So it's literally
Ah,
said ingredients organic grapes, you know,
I love that.
certified organic grapes. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, that's huge. All right. So I was like, yeah. But right to so what you were saying is referring to this idea that like to call your wine organic, you can have like the way that the regulations were set up was that you can't have added any sulfites at all.
Yeah.
And that seems, well, it seems detrimental to the end results that we, I think, want, which is greater adoption of organic, greater consumer awareness, and greater consumer adoption, or greater consumer purchasing of these products that are made organically with organic grapes. Because I mean, this is why organic wine has such a bad rap, because
I
with these
know.
regulations you had a lot of people doing 0 wine that turned out kind of
Not so
crappy,
good.
not so
Yeah.
good, unfortunately, back in the 90s, and
Hmm.
that is the reputation that, it's still a bit of a stigma, especially with, like the boomer generation, Gen X, like who might have had some of those, like they're still really stuck on like, if it's called organic wine, or just if it is organic wine, it's bad. And it's like, no, it has to do with regulations and sulfites and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So that would be a welcome change. So how can we support that petition? Like those of us who would like to support it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, okay, we need more money. We have some pledges, and we really want to potentially look at this as a grassroots effort. So, if any of your listeners is interested in this, please feel free to reach out. And we are contracting with someone. Not, it would be the wine community is contracting with someone who would be writing this, and but we're helping support it, like by making introductions or trying to find some other funders. I mean, really, we're looking for anyone who wants to contribute even a small amount, who we could get kind of a enough to get going, and then hope we can raise the rest going along. But I do think that this would help a lot of different growers. I see this as a West Coast thing. Like, this would be a really great thing for the West Coast. And as I was touching on earlier, the younger markets, the Wine Market Council in 2025 found that 59% of younger 21 to 39 and multicultural consumers prefer organically grown wines. So when we're looking at, like, okay, so the boomers, they think it's all terrible, but you have these younger generations who want it. So I think that this is really important as wine is facing such challenges right now. Like, okay, here's a market where you're seeing growth. This is where we should be
Right.
focusing our energy on. So I would say it's follow the Organic Wine Growers Network, follow the Oregon Organic Coalition, reach out if you have any interest in helping to support this work. And I would say, if we can get enough seed money to get it going, then we put some updates out through the Organic Wine Growers Network.
Okay, great. And so, I mean, and for anybody like sort of nationally in the U.S., is that is the go to their website or go to the organic
They have, yeah, they
Oregon?
have a website. It is organicwinegrowers.com.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of the organic wine growers, there's another conference coming up. The first one was a pretty amazing success, I thought. Anyway, I hope everybody felt that way. Um,
I thank you for saying that, because really we pulled it off on a very short time frame on an incredibly shoestring budget, and it was, thankfully Rob Schultz from Littleton and Drew Herman from Alexana. He's now down in California, but the three of us kind of cooked this up, and then luckily had some PR support from Alexana's PR at the time, wonderful woman named Laura Burgess, and then we had some PR support here from Field Day PR. But it was very by the skin of our teeth, but it was a truly grassroots, really sweet. Like, there was such a good vibe that day. Everybody had a
yeah,
good time, and we're really hoping to catapult off the success of that first conference. Like, so this year, we originally had wanted it to be 3 days. Unfortunately, we didn't get enough funding, so it's 2 days, which is still better. And so, we'll see. And it's going to be at a couple different locations. And I'm hoping it will have the same, it's definitely going to still have that same very farmer led focus, peer to peer learning. And I think what made last year so special too was that this was the first time that acknowledged in the room. We had a panel with a lot of great people on it, Louisa Ponzi and Drew Herman and some other people. And that the room acknowledged that this was the first time that the fabled Willamette Valley had ever gathered around farming practices instead of just the wine. And that was
yeah,
really meaningful. And we had these
so
really
meaningful.
cool field tours, and they all went over time because people were asking so many questions. And we had a fair amount of media there. And I think a lot of media hear these ag terms, but they don't really know what it looks like. Like, I still remember when I think Madeline Rowan and somebody else led a cover crop talk, and we were like literally standing in the vineyard looking at cover crops, and she gave us like the sheet to go around and try and find the different cover crops. I mean, that was really moving, or like seeing the super healthy soil and seeing the compost. And we'll be doing 2 different field tours again this year on both day 1 and day 2.
Amazing. That's great. Yeah, no, I mean, it's now 2 days. It was one day last year. Um,
One very long day last year.
yeah, it was pretty epic. In a great way. I mean, like it was, yeah, like pretty fantastic, honestly. And I do remember the press when there was some press Q&A. I was like, "Oh yeah, there is definitely need for some education here." Like
Hmm.
just the press questions were, clearly like and that's always going to be the case. It's like it's not their job to be farmers; it's their job to communicate. So they're always going to sort of be learning as they write, but yeah, I was just like, yeah, I'm so glad they're here. Like definitely
Hmm.
necessary. So that was great.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, anything else? I mean, the when is the conference?
So the conference is April 20th and 21st. And
Fantastic.
again, you can
Which is Earth
register.
Day.
I know, isn't that sweet? Again, organicwinegrowers.com, and there's a conference registration. And there's going to be also, a, on the second day, there's going to be a happy hour. We're tasting with a lot of these wines, and that's open to the public. I mean, the whole thing is open to the public, but really, day one is geared towards buyers, media, policymakers, stakeholders, and trying to. We definitely would love to see more people buying wines directly from some of these smaller producers. Same thing kind of getting at like with that resilient regional food system, like a resilient regional wine system where we have restaurants buying directly from some of these people or distributors. So really trying to expose them, but also to the story. So again, like why wine grown this way is better, living soil matters, things like that. And then there'll be a field tour and a tasting at Soder. And then day two, it's going to be more peer to peer specifically. But if media can't make it on the first day, they're welcome on the second. They'll get to be around a lot of farmers, which I also think media like to meet the farmers and hear about how these practices look in real life.
It's because farmers are so sexy. I get it.
They
I get it.
are. Oh my gosh, beyond, beyond.
um, are there any other questions for that you? Anything I should have asked you? Any other urgent topics or things of importance and need that we should be, that we need to know about?
My mind feels like a sieve this morning too. I think we touched on it, and what I was
Yeah.
going to say is sometimes like when you're doing ag policy, it's can be in the weeds, or it's just about the farming practices and supporting the farmers. But what all farmers need is all viability, not just farm viability, economic viability. And so I think really hitting that message home about how resilient regional food systems and wine systems can tie into economics. And some people think, oh, you're talking about money, that's where you leave me. But no, it's really important that farm viability is centered. And I think right now, as we were hinting on, like knowing that we are going to be facing another major global upset, and that is going to impact food, gas, fertilizer, all of these input costs. Like again, what can we learn that we saw in the pandemic? How can we go back to that? How can we be bolstering up resilient regional food systems? Again, sadly, we're probably not going to be seeing as much federal dollars going in to help those things. But then that is why state level advocacy is important, because you can be making these arguments at a state level. And what can states do? States that have invested a lot in organic include Pennsylvania. And they shot up all of a sudden. They started investing millions of dollars into organic and massively increased. I can send you the stats. I don't have them out, but it was like an impressive growth. So states can be investing into organic, like Oregon did with organic extension. Again, they're helping all farmers across the state, many who are not certified or they're split operations. Like that really, really helps. Here it
And
is.
that I mean, Pennsylvania is my home state, so I'm very proud to hear that. But I know it also has to do with Rodale, which is right there in Kutztown,
Yes,
and they,
yes.
I mean, when you have advocacy from the farms, it really makes a difference. And so again, that's just a great argument for taking a leadership role as a farmer to work with representatives and work with your local, policy people and advocates and representatives and get the word out and get, educate and do the work. I mean, they've been at it for, since the 60s, I believe Rodale has been at
Mm-hmm.
it. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's, but they approached it so smartly, doing the side by side trials. They're showing
Yep.
the economic and
Yep.
environmental, just side by side comparisons that are just undeniable at this point because they've been like 40-year side by side trials. And yeah, it's pretty incredible, and anybody can now use that research. So I mean, use, anybody out there listening, use the Rodale Institute as a resource. It's an amazing organic resource.
Yep.
um, Definitely have talked to them for this podcast, so there's a great episode back in the back back in the library,
Okay.
with Rodale.
Yeah, I'll put a plug in for Organic Farming Research Foundation too on the West Coast. They're doing a lot
Oh,
of great
fantastic. Where are
work
they
too.
based?
They are based in Santa Cruz, but they
Okay.
also run a
Yes.
lot of trials. They also do advocacy. So, these are all
Oh.
organizations you could be following and kind of
Say that.
get their
What
connect.
was the name again? The West Coast?
Organic Farming Research Foundation,
Yeah, I should know about them. Well, Santa Cruz. I know
OFRF.
about Santa Cruz. Okay. Organic Research Farming
Yeah.
Foundation. Got it.
And then the Organic Agriculture Program at OSU, they are putting out a lot of cool stuff.
Fantastic.
Like even
Good.
backyard grain growing. One of the extension specialists, her Bridget Mines, she specializes in naked barley and grains and pulses, and again, really wanted to show people. So she's been doing this backyard gardening and like growing grains in her backyard.
Fantastic. I love that. I also
Yeah.
have a permaculture certificate from OSU,
Oh,
which is
very
great. Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, it's a great program. I mean, I think it's probably the top permaculture certification in the world at this point. Maybe one of them anyway. Don't, who am
Yeah,
I
I'm
to
sure.
make that
Lots
call?
of
But
yeah.
statistically, Oregon is pretty great when it comes to organics and wine, right? Like in terms of
Hmm.
relative to, like, you guys are the best, I think, in terms of percentage of organic or other, biodynamic, some sort of ecological certification, but certainly organic. Do you have those statistics in terms of how many people, how many farms or
Okay,
farm acreage or anything?
I think it's like roughly 3,000 acres of Oregon has roughly 3,000 acres of organic wine grapes and more than 40 wineries with certified organic wines. And of those, like that, those 3,000 acres amounted to 7% of Oregon's wine grapes, or roughly 40,000 harvested acres in 2024. Where in comparison, California's organic wine grape acres are between 3 and 4% of total wine grapes.
Right, right. And I think in Washington, which is so close to you, is even lower than
I believe
California. I think
so.
it's like low 3%.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and easier to grow there, which I mean, says something about the culture of Oregon. I've talked about this. It's not about, I mean, it's not about whether it's possible. It's about the decision to do it. It's about incentivizing that decision to go
Hmm.
organic.
And making
Uh,
sure there's a support for it. I mean, I think
yeah, that's a really
part
good point.
of transitioning, it's about risk management. And that's where you saw the Transition to Organic Partnership Program. That was a 5-year grant program that's ending this year. And that was really about just having someone hold your hand. You could get a mentor. I mean, you think you still can for the rest of this year. TOPP. Again about making sure it's going to pencil out. Like, is this going to be an economically viable situation for me? And so that is critical. And so I think the Organic Wine Growers Network, this is a place where you can go get support for like, how am I going to do this? Coming to this conference is going to show you how they're doing this, how they handle powdery mildew, how they handle voles, like whatever it might be. Like, you're going to have a built-in network of people to help you make that decision. And I'm advocating, while you still can get free support through top, get it. You'll have you can get a mentor who can really like assess your situation to see if certification is right for you.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I know. I know somebody who's like a transition specialist there in Oregon. So it's like,
Hmm.
though. Do you know if those exist in all states for people who are trying to become organic or thinking about it, considering it, and want to just have somebody come out and consult on their farm and talk them
Abs-
through?
yeah, certainly through top through the end of the year. I mean, you might not be able to get help at closer to the end of the year, but probably still right now. And so there are regional centers of top throughout the entire country. And so if
Okay.
you find, let me see if I can find the,
And while you're looking that up, I like one of the
yeah.
coolest arguments I've heard, since wine is going through such a contraction right now.
Hmm.
Um, one of the best arguments I heard was, now is a great time to transition to organic, because likely you'll have some temporary drop in production as your soils adjust, as your plants adjust, and everything like that. And what better time in history of wine to
Hmm.
to have a lower production when sales are decreasing for most people, and also to set you up for better sales going forward, because it seems like the sales that aren't decreasing are to places that are focusing on these ecological approaches to wine. This is, from statistically, what I've seen is that these are the places where the drop offs are either not happening or least in terms of wine sales, are with
Yeah.
ecologically focused.
Internationally, the organic wine industry is projected to reach 25 billion by 2030, up from 9.84 billion in 2021. So that's like a growth rate of 11.3%. So that's promising in a
It's great.
market and industry that's otherwise not doing so great.
Yeah.
So yeah, the top, if you wanted to find top resources in your region, there's different regions throughout the country. It's organictransition.org, and then you can go to your region and you'd be able to find there. Each region had a lead, and that lead would be able to put you in touch and help coordinate, if not through this website directly.
Fantastic. Amy, thank you so much for all this. What else? Is there anything else that we should cover?
No, not that I can think of. This has been such a pleasure. I mean, I know because I am not a wine specialist at all, but I do care about organic, and I think that especially in states where wine is a really important part of agriculture, talking about organic management and organic practices and that concept is really important. So I'm glad that I could be here and give a plug for supporting your local policy advocates.
Yeah, thanks. And anything specifically related to supporting you and your work that you haven't mentioned already?
Well, just please feel free to follow Oregon Organic Coalition, Instagram, or join our newsletter, or the Organic Wine, both Organic Wine Growers Network. That's really how you could support the work that we're trying to do in Oregon.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure, Adam.
Hey, thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for supporting those of you who subscribe and share and make it possible for me to continue to do this. I really appreciate it. And if you'd like to support, you can easily do that by subscribing at beyondorganicwine.substack.com. Thank you so much, and a big thanks to Colden Pro for some beautiful new closing music.